discussion today is about life insurance. A lot of folks see life insurance as a necessary evil. A lot of folks see life insurance as something that you carry during a short period of time, during your youth, when you're under the gun to take care of your family, to build a career, to pursue your education, to take care of your kids. The big challenge that I have seen over a long period of time, there have been multiple challenges. And I was visiting with a local law firm yesterday morning, and they were asking me, what does it take to get credentialed in the life insurance business? And I said, oh, I'm really sorry you asked me that, because it takes about 4 weeks. And I'm sitting here with about 300 years of accumulated knowledge, and you actually went to college and postgraduate for that education. The problem that we have in our business, now that I'm over the hump and been in business for a long time and do have some legitimate credentials, is that our business is too easy to get into. So there are about 500,000 licensed individuals in the United States who call themselves financial planners, or CFPs, or life insurance agents, or insurance agents of some kind, financial experts, financial coaches. And they have taken to the streets and promoted and sold a lot of different types of products. The general public has gone away from understanding what life insurance actually did and how it started. If you go back into the 1700s, you'll find that the original life insurance policy was created in order to help build a fund for retirement for the Presbyterian ministers. So there's a Presbyterian Ministers Relief Society, which is actually owned. Those policies have been taken over by Nationwide. I know that because I was on the phone with Nationwide last week to help a family member file a death claim. And they let us know that Presbyterian Ministers is actually a company that still has policies on the books. The company's about 270 years old. And different iterations of companies have come and gone over the years. There are some companies that we work with, typically, that are 100 to 180 years old. So we're working with older companies, conservative companies that don't lose the money. Now, unfortunately, a lot of agents and salespeople, I use that word in the most derogatory manner that I could, have taken, I'm going to focus a little bit on Index Universal Life today. I am not a fan of Index Universal Life. I'm not a fan of Variable Life. I'm not a fan of Universal Life. All those products actually came into being after I got into the insurance business. So when I sit down with a client and talk about guarantees and about working with a company, and we're typically working with mutual companies that are 100 years old, these companies have decided that for marketing purposes, they'd like to come in and create a product that is a little bit more jazzy, a little bit more attractive, a little bit more sexy, and a little bit more connected to the stock market. And so they came about with different versions of Universal Life, Variable Life, Index Life, Adjustable Life. We're going to talk about a few of those things. But next. Maybe we go to whiteboard.
Up here?
Next. Wow. So how much, what kind, how long? If anybody has the formula that can help us answer these questions consistently for every single client, you probably make $10 billion in the next 90 days. Because if you get 20 financial planners in the room, you get 20 different answers. Some people say that you should have some, see if you can. So if you guys are on the call, I need y'all to mute yourself so that we can't hear you. Yeah, we can hear you too. So put your calls on mute. That'd be helpful.
You lost audio also.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
You've lost audio.
I'll shoot him a message in case they can't
You're
hear
not
me.
hearing you. You've lost audio.
It's in song. I don't know what.
They didn't do anything.
You know what? I'm not worried about it. If you lose audio, if you lose video, if you lose the webinar, we're recording this and we'll send it back to you. We'll send you the completed version. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
And from whom? We like to ask the question from whom. We like to show that proof after we give the value. So if our clients come to our classes and they learn from us, they're going to find out. We don't want clients to just come and get information because we said so. We don't want to dictate to people based on our expertise. We want to actually create education, create an environment where clients can get the information, can go online, can get the resources, can read the books. Some clients want to do that. Some clients want to do it the old way, which is just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And if it doesn't work out in 5 years, I'll come back and complain. We just as soon create that education system where people will come back continually and come back to the well and get the education. Next. So rule number 1, all types of life insurance are actuarially designed to be equivalent at age 100. Now, how many of you have ever heard of a term policy being, and I hate to use the word, cheap? We buy cheap term, right? So we just actually put a policy into effect for a young man, I think he's 30 years old or so, $1 million for about $35 a month. Okay, cheap term, right? Downside with that? What's the downside?
Covers 20 minutes.
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah. So in his case, it covers 20 years, right? 30 years old, goes out to age 50. And now at age 50, guess what his premium's going to be? So we'll talk about that in a second. But again, modern media, modern culture, modern newspapers are telling us, well, just go buy cheap term and invest the difference in something else so that you can build your estate, build your career, build your wealth profile. All life insurance is actuarially designed to be equivalent at age 100. So if you follow that 20-year term policy, starting at age 30, and you keep that policy in force, when that young man is 50 years old, his premium is going to go up into the thousands, maybe tens of thousands, and by the time he gets to 100, he will, if on $1 million policy, he will have put in more premium than the face amount. And there's kind of a secret to this. Life insurance companies know this. Okay. For some reason, the general public doesn't seem to get that if you buy a product that you're not putting very much value into, you're not going to get very much value out of. So, John, I'll put you on the spot. How many people do you think you've shaken hands with, or that you've met visually, face to face, in your lifetime? I don't care what the number is.
Yes, 5,000, 10,000.
5,000, 10,000. I'll bet it's 100,000. I'll bet you've met 100,000 people. So let's just throw a number out. How many people do you know personally that have died by accident? 5, 10, 20. A small number, right? Out of a huge number, right? I'm sure I've met hundreds of thousands of people. I only know personally a couple of dozen, I'm going to say a couple of dozen in my lifetime, in my 64 years, who died by accident or homicide. I'll even throw in homicide and suicide. How many people die during that 20-year period? During that 20-year term? Almost nobody. Insurance companies know this. Insurance companies know this, and so if I'm an insurance company and I'm issuing a policy, I am guaranteeing that individual is going to last 20 years plus. So if I issue a policy on a current, I know he's going to last 20 years. Otherwise, I'm not issuing the policy. So think about life insurance when you're buying term. Now, I'm not saying don't buy term. We're going to talk about different types. But term insurance covers a certain period of time. The insurance company's betting that you're going to be alive The individual buying the term insurance policy is betting that you're going to die. You need to either lower those or cut them off.
Yeah, I mean,
Do whatever you want to do.
you can
just fire them.
We can mute them.
So think about it. Life insurance companies, billions and billions of dollars of assets, sometimes tens of billions, sometimes hundreds of billions of dollars. You're issuing a policy because they know you're going to live. 98, 99% of term policies never result in a death claim. There's another key factor in understanding term insurance. So if you were to buy a product that was going to work 1% of the time, how excited would you be about buying the product? Right? But we buy insurance to serve a certain purpose. Short-term need, long-term desire. So here's my question. When would you like your insurance to end? We ask this of our clients all the time. Anybody want to throw this answer out? I mean, I know we're in a room full of professionals, but answer for yourself, answer for your family, answer for your spouses, answer for your clients.
Once they pay it out.
Okay, so you're gonna be cynical.
But I mean,
So,
I want my life insurance to end after I die, and people have paid it out.
okay, that's one answer, and there is no right or wrong answer. So if a client says, well, I only want my insurance for a certain period of time because I plan on having my estate built up by a certain period of time, and by then I won't need the insurance anymore, right? That's the theory. I think that's our next slide. So human capital is our greatest asset. I always kind of refer to the senior level of management in a company, and we're used to those terms in corporations and businesses, closely held companies. The senior level of management. Well, I think of the senior partners or senior members of a family as the senior members of management. So the greatest generation, the top level of the family, in my view, are the greatest source of our capital. So the theory on the one hand is buy term and invest the difference. And along the left-hand side, we see kind of the characteristics or attributes of people who are in their youth, who look at their family situation and say, first of all, I don't have a lot of income, but I do need to protect myself and my family in the short run. Yeah, so, yeah, I think to the point where we get the question right there. So life insurance companies will love to sell term insurance to these people because 99% don't result in a claim, it's cheap, it's easy to get into, and then what happens is the expectation at retirement time, which is kind of a misnomer for a lot of people, because you all know that most of your friends and clients are not prepared and not going to be prepared for quote-unquote retirement at age 65. The government continues to encourage us to look at an option of retirement at 62 and 66, 67 for full retirement age. But you know, they're really stacking the deck to wait till 70 for full Social Security benefits. From 66 to 70, if you wait to collect your Social Security, your benefit's going to increase 8% a year during those 4 years. 32%, big number. Right? So we're buying term insurance, and for me, the pivot point is that question mark. We get to that retirement age, and we say, okay, I'm gonna build up all my assets, and I'm gonna work like crazy from the time I'm 20 to the time I'm 60 or 65, and then at 60 or 65, whatever the number is, I'm gonna be ready to retire. You know anybody like that? Well, not everybody. Not everybody. A lot of people are talking about retirement at 60, and they kind of forgot to start saving. So they're coming in at age 60, and they're talking to us and saying, what should I do to retire in 5 years? Okay, well, how much do you have? Well, I don't have anything yet, but I need you to tell me what I should do to retire at 65. I mean, these are people who come in with these with these questions seriously. But see, the mindset of the person is, I'm going to work like crazy from 20 to 60, and I'm going to get that retirement because I deserve it. And once I hit 60, then I'll be able to just enjoy the rest of my time. You know, go hunting, go camping, go fishing, go to the beach, travel the world with the nest egg that I've built up, right? And if life expectancy on paper is 70 or 75 or 78, you know that when they talk about those averages, half of those people will live past 78 and half of them will not. So if we have a couple who reaches age 65, there's a pretty good chance that one of them will hit 90. Hopefully Jack. But the idea is, I'm going to get to 65, and I'm going to plan to distribute my assets so that they last from the time I retire until the time I expire, right? Until the time I like to use the word graduate, right? And you can do the math all day long, but how much money is a given person going to need to retire, given a certain amount of income? I mean, the numbers are staggering, and people are coming in here and saying, well, you know, I'm 28 years old, I like this one, and I want to retire when I'm 34. Well, that's good. I mean, you can pick your poison, but it takes a lot of dollars to fill that bucket. But now psychologically, what I see when I see that type of a person is they're already programming themselves to become obsolete. They're programming themselves to be taken out of service, to be less useful, to stop creating value. And I would bet $1 that most of the people in this room don't think that way. I'm just guessing, and you can disagree with me, but I believe that most of the people in this room are the kind of thinking people that want to keep on creating value. I've been told that I'm better now than I was 10 years ago, professionally. And if that's the case, is it possible that if I stay sharp and I stay healthy and I keep on creating value and I keep on studying my craft, then I might be better 10 years from now? So if that's the case, why would I want to stop creating value? Why would I take myself out of service at some arbitrary age? Now the problem with this is, you can't change your mind when you get to 65. You really have to start thinking about it when you're young. We have to start teaching our kids. This is my view, my bias. We have to start teaching our kids that retirement doesn't make any sense. Retirement is an antiquated, obsolete term in its own right. It was stolen or borrowed from another country, and it didn't work there either. So there are countries on the planet that intentionally take their older people out of the workforce just when they're getting good, just when they're getting smart, just when they're beginning to create value. Now, let's talk about the by term. So if you're a young person, you're 30 years old, let's say, and you're making, I don't know, what's a 30-year-old making today in the average workplace? 30,000, 40,000, less. My daughter got her master's degree in counseling psychology 2 years ago up in Seattle, and called me up and said, Dad, I now have the privilege of making $3 an hour more than a McDonald's worker. So young people are making less than older people, right? Typically. But when we're buying term insurance, the problem with the life insurance is, I hate to say it this way, just boldly, people don't like life insurance people. So first of all, we're honored that you would even show up. Okay? But people don't like having to meet with life insurance people because it's a negative experience. We make you buy something, take money out of your pocket, and you have to die to collect, is the old song. So 30-year-old makes $50,000, asks us how much life insurance should I have? And I said, well, as much as you can get. How much life insurance will the insurance company give me? Well, they'll give you 30 times what you make. 30 times what you make. 30 times 50. They'll give you $1.5 million. And typically a young person will say, well, I don't think she needs that much. Right? She can get along on X. What can I get away with? What does she need? I don't know. What does she need? What are you driving now? I'm driving a $70,000 F-150. What can she get away with? A smart car with the 4 kids. That'll work. But now shift forward and think about that person who's been creating value and who has become more valuable. Is that 60-year-old who's creating value making $50,000? If he or she is a business owner, entrepreneur, a thinker, a creator, an inventor, they're making $500,000. They're making $1 million. Let's go hit the next little button. So I think very optimistically about older people. Duh. Why would I not? I'm still thinking. I'm still creating value. I'm thinking outside of myself. I don't necessarily want to build everything that I'm building for me and for my kids and for my family. I want to build it for people outside of myself, people I haven't even met. In my case, I want to build for schools, for kids, for education, for scholarships, maybe for some missions or ministries or some missionaries outside of our country. I want to keep on creating outward, pushing outward, and being other focused. But now, if I'm in that point, the BPIE stands for buy permanent and invest everything. So I think Kirk hit it on the head when he said, I want my life insurance to stay in effect as long as I do. That's just me. So when people ask me, what type of life insurance should I have? I say, generic answer, the policy that will be in effect on the day you die. I don't have to worry about a policy that's going to expire when I'm 68 years old and I have to go shopping for insurance when I'm 68 and maybe not as healthy as I was when I was 28. But think about the value that that person above that line is creating. So if I'm making $1 million a year, what will the insurance company want to insure me for? Well, I can tell you it's not 30 times. Like they insured the 30-year-old. It's maybe 10 times, or in the alternative, 100% of my net worth. So a person who's 60 or 65 or 70 years old, we're still writing a policy that's 10 times their income. Because when that person graduates, they have a lot more responsibilities and a lot more desires and a lot more initiatives that they want to fund. This is the way I look at it. The person who continues to, on the upward climb, is going to have their greatest amount of income potential ahead of them, not behind them. People who think in a kind of limited capacity or a scarcity capacity or a poverty mindset are going to look at themselves as a limited quantity. They're only going to want to cover a limited amount, and it's typically going to be an amount that is outdated 5 or 10 years after they bought that policy. Truth be told, that 30-year-old should have bought multiple policies along the way. He shouldn't have bought one policy and waited 15 years to review it, or 15 years to update it, or 15 years to think about what else is out there. Is it universal? Is it adjustable? Can I make 14% in the stock market like Susie Orman says I should? Maybe. Not from this advisor. Okay. Can't wait to see what's next, based on the technology. So, when is a guarantee not a guarantee? You have a handout because I do have kind of an axe to grind. I want to share my axe with you. We're going to talk a little bit about when is a guarantee, not a guarantee. There are some handouts, and one of them is labeled IUL. This is the picture of a policy that a young man, yeah, it says IUL. What's that company? North American company. So that's an actual schedule page. It says IUL on the top, page 1. Now, if I were to ask, let me see. Let's think about an investment that has a guaranteed rate of return. And we start out with $100, and we're going to get 5% in a year. How much should we have at the end of the year? And I know I have a bunch of CPAs in here, so I should be able to get an answer. Start out with 100, 5% guarantee. End of the year you have. We only have until 1 o'clock. All right. 1 o'clock. Thank you. All right. So that means we should have an increasing amount of money the more we add a guaranteed rate. Now, in your handout, sorry, I don't have one in front of me. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this first, because the first page is, first of all, very, very confusing. And I'm going to tell you this right now. 80% of your clients do not know what they own. 80% of lawyers don't know what they own. 80% of accountants don't know what they own. Realtors, architects, business owners, CEOs, CFOs don't know what you own. In the lower left, where I have one of the bigger arrows, it says guaranteed interest rate 3%. Are we agreed that 3% on top of a number should give us a bigger number?
Yes.
Okay. So this gentleman, who's now, by the way, the person who bought this policy, what do they say about attorneys who defend themselves in court? Fool for client. We'll make sure that we don't send this video to him. The person who bought this policy sold it to himself. I was not the agent. I don't sell IUL. Okay. When I went through the details and the contract with him, I pointed out that the contract has a guaranteed interest rate of 3%. He's putting $29,861, is it? $29,861. If we multiply that out until he's 95 years old, at 3%, we should get about $2.7 million. Are we agreed on that? If just take my word for it that this is not a fraudulent calculator. So he was 51 years old when he started. We went 44 years, went to age 95. He should have $2.7 million. Now, if you go to page 2, I'm going to point out a couple of the items that are going to subtract from that 3% guarantee. Now, this is an IUL. And I'm not going to go into a lot of dissertation about IULs. Suffice to say, you have an interest rate that's guaranteed. And you have an opportunity to participate in a stock market component, either one component or more than one component of the stock market. So you may, emphasize may, get a higher interest rate credited to your policy. Now, a little bit of a catch is that we're also going to subtract a few little minor itsy-bitsy expenses. So, do you see where I have circled number 1? Item number 1, that is a premium load of 5% in this particular client's case. 5% of the premium off the top is a premium load that amounts to $1,493
Per year.
Expense number 2 was a policy expense charge of $8 per month to age 100, $96, not unreasonable. That's okay, I'm okay with that. I'm sorry that I don't have a perfect picture, but I have what the client faxed to me, so that's what I have. The third was a unit expense charge. It starts out at 34.5 cents per thousand. I don't want to make you crazy with the numbers, but you have to multiply that per thousand by the number of thousands in his policy, which is 500,000. Which means today he's having deducted $2,000 per year as an additional expense. But it says that the maximum unit expense charge is $1.85 per month per thousand. That number, as you can see, I wrote by hand, is about $20,000, which is able to be subtracted from your 3% guarantee. But wait, there's more. Number 4, I forget what that period expense is. It's another $246. Now you notice it still says 3% guarantee. We didn't give you a picture of his illustration because it came out too blurred. Now if you go to the next item, which says item number 5, this is the item that is being employed by insurance companies today who for the past 30 years have not been able to come up with a product that works. And the reason we know that is because the universal life and variable life policies that were manufactured 30 years ago stopped working 20 years ago. And so they're having to come back and re-engineer and remanufacture and retool their product because they don't work. Because they're not getting the rate of return that they thought, that they advertised, that they should be getting in the market. So what you're looking at here is my answer to when is a guarantee not a guarantee? There are good guarantees and there are bad guarantees. Yvonne, I guarantee that at the end of the day, I will serve you a nice cold bottle of Dasani water. That's a good guarantee. Kirk, if you wear that shirt again, I'm going to punch you in the face. That's a bad guarantee. Guys, ladies, what you're looking at here is a bad guarantee. This is the guaranteed worst case mortality expense charges in this person's policy. And all I did was take the numbers on the left, multiply by 500, and tell you what the worst case is. I don't know if you want to be spending $8,150 a month in mortality charges for your life insurance policy when you're 89 years old. Now, they don't kind of tell you that the 3% is the top line crediting number, and then they get to deduct all the expenses. Item number 6, the 4th page of your handout, is kind of irrelevant because that is a surrender charge that does go away if you're misinformed. Let's use that word. If you're misinformed enough to keep this policy for 16 years, your surrender charge will go away. So in the early years, that surrender charge will be tens of thousands of dollars. Now the part that we
Define surrender charge.
define surrender charge. The surrender charge is the charge that they charge you for getting out. So you may have an account value that's up here, but you have a surrender charge, which means if you back out policy, the account value isn't really your money. The surrender number is low. So we reproduced the value of your IUL. These were the increasing values in the early years, and then you go to the next page, and we just reproduced this from his actual illustration provided by this insurance company. And at age 95, age 96, can anybody read the number that's in the account value column, the second column? It's in red. It's a really small number.
0.
It's 0. I did the math. That's not 3%. Now, unfortunately, I've had clients come to me over the past 10 to 15 years who bought these types of policies. And they've come in and they've said, I think I'm being defrauded because I originally started paying the insurance company. I can think of the one gentleman who came in and said, I was paying them $6,000 a year in 1995. And I just got a premium notice for 3 times that. And he said, this has to be wrong. Somebody's trying to take my money away from me. Somebody's cheating. And we opened up the contract and we said, actually, they're allowed to charge you this because your contract says that they can. Now, if you want to do a Google search, in about 8 seconds, you'll get thousands or tens of thousands of hits that show you that mortality charges are on the increase for these types of policies. And yet, guess what kind of policy people are buying most of? Any guesses? Indexed Universal Life. You know why? Because I can give you an illustration, and the National Association of Insurance Commissioners just changed the rules nationally to prevent what I would call unscrupulous agents from illustrating 8, 10, 12, 14% hypothetical rates of return from the stock market going forward. And they actually had to be told, you can't illustrate market returns that people aren't getting. And so the NAIC, the National Insurance Commissioner, said you can only illustrate it's about 6.7, isn't it? I think it's the max number. You're only allowed to illustrate 6.7 as a gross top line number before you start subtracting all of these expenses. So, what is a guarantee, not a guarantee? Well, why do you buy life insurance in the first place? You don't buy it because you're trying to compete with the stock market or your business returns or buying real estate or other types of speculation. You buy life insurance because you want a death benefit to be paid on a guaranteed basis after a guaranteed event, and or you want some kind of a guaranteed return. I think I also gave you in your folder a copy of one of my policies that has my name on it. And the only thing that's obliterated is my policy number so that all of you couldn't go and call the insurance company and ask for a policy number or something. And now I'm going to give you the positive side of a guarantee. That's a depiction of one of my policies I bought maybe 7, 8 years ago. And you'll notice on the one side it has a guaranteed cash value column. Policy charges are deducted before the cash values are announced. The cost of operating the company, their overhead, their market returns or lack of market returns, their claims that they have to pay, their light bill, those are all deducted up front. So when they issue a policy, I think the rate of return, the contract rate might have been 4%. It might have been 4.5%.
4.5.
4.5 back in the day. It's 4% today on new policies. So I know that when I look at my guaranteed cash value column, it's not a percentage. It's not, well, we might pay you 3%, we might pay you 6%, but we're going to deduct all of our expenses. So I know that at a guaranteed point in time, when I graduate, I'm going to have a guaranteed payout of a guaranteed amount by a company that's not going anywhere and makes a practice of not losing the money. You must have some questions by now. Thank you.
Did you sell this one yourself?
I did sell that one to myself. That's good. I did sell that one to myself, and I've sold myself 30 others just like it. And every time I come here and talk, I get more excited than anybody else because I go and buy some. That's the way. Yeah.
Can you let everybody know who dialed in that we could email them a copy of the handouts later today?
Yeah, anybody who's on the call who has tolerated our technology glitches will get copies of everything that we're sharing. So please forgive us for the technology. Questions? Clear as mud, boring as dirt. I said this is a life insurance discussion. I'm not going to give you all the reasons why permanent life insurance is a good idea. I think we're just listing a couple of them. And I think some of you have seen this. I was sitting with a gentleman, and I won't mention his name, Jack. He's a friend of yours and mine. Sitting with a gentleman yesterday who is a professional who does qualified plan business
Okay, sure.
and who also does captives.
Yeah.
And when I showed him some of the information about banks buying life insurance, he was amazed. And he's a life insurance professional, and I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know this until 15 years ago, and I should have known this 40 years ago. But some wise guy named John Todd walked into a bank in the late 1960s and opened up a relationship with a banking institution and said, you know what, in your portfolio, you think it might be a good idea for your bank to own life insurance. And it became such a huge industry that they created their own product. It's bank-owned life insurance. And Bank of America has about $20 billion worth of cash value in their life insurance policies. You can say that's negative. You can say it's positive. You can say it's a bad idea. You can say I don't want my company. I want Walmart buying life insurance on the janitor. Separate issue. This is a corporate strategy. It's a product that makes sense. And if we're putting our money in banks, the banks are taking some of our money, turning around and buying life insurance with it, you think there might be an opportunity for us to remove the middleman and do some of the same things that banks are doing with our money before they lend it back to us. And some of you have not been in other classes, but I'll just give you this little tidbit. In 2014, Bank of America was holding $800 billion of our money because we lent it to them in the form of savings deposits. You got that number? What was it?
Yeah.
I do like to show. $800 billion. Got a guess of how much they paid us in interest?
Not much.
Bauer report, B-A-U-E-R, Bauer.com, about $1.9 billion. They paid us for borrowing our money. And what did they do with our money? You've got to keep on reminding us, they lent our money back to us. And you got any guess of how much we paid them in interest to borrow back our own money from the custodian? We paid them $44 billion in interest. I keep on having to repeat that to myself because I want to make sure that I don't make that same mistake over and over again. But the positive thing is I'm learning about velocity from banks. Because banks don't keep the money sitting. This is Anthony's favorite slide because it has motion. Right there. So in 2011, life insurance as an asset became fully protected from the creditors of the insurance, of the insured person, of the owner of the insurance. And there might be some exceptions where that policy is owned by a corporation, but we're talking about a personally owned policy is completely exempt from the claims of creditors. I have some plaintiffs' attorneys who are clients of mine, and they really got irritated that we got that bill put through as a plaintiff's attorney. But they also happen to be policyholders, and they were really happy about that side. People like the idea of having a certain asset that can't be touched. I mean, can't be touched except by,
IRS.
I don't mean to point you out,
IRS.
except by the IRS. Because the IRS, I mean, they have no rules after all. So we select life insurance companies that make a habit out of not losing the money. It's just plain and simple. We talk to a lot of people who are happy to have their money sitting in banks, earning under 1% in interest. They've put their money in banks all their lives. They're used to dealing with banks. And then when you go and look up the statistics, you find that even in this century, in the past 16 years, There have been 500 banks that have failed in this country. And when banks fail, they are supported and subsidized. The savers are backed up by our tax dollars, which go to the Treasury, which get redirected to FDIC. I don't know how you feel about that. It kind of feels to me like a government protection of a private institution. I don't know why we have FDIC. Because it lets the founders and the operators, the managers of the banks get off pretty much scot-free. I forget how much Silver State Bank lost about 10 years ago or so. It was in the tens of millions, $50 to $100 million. The gentleman who was the chairman of the loan department of Silver State Bank was fined $30,000. That's public record. The rest of the losses were borne by us. Just trying to put things in perspective. Gee, we look better in the newspaper this morning. My wife didn't have any idea why I thought that should be relevant to a financial discussion. And it says here, and this is frank and earnest, we're butterflies, Ernie. I don't think we're supposed to have long-term goals. And I said to my wife, we're not butterflies. So maybe we can start thinking in terms that are longer than what's coming out. The movie's next month. What's the next? What's that movie where the Transformers? What's the next Transformer movie? What's the next Matt Damon movie? What's happening beyond the next 6 months? What's happening after the election? Are our lives going to be completely on hold until election day? And then half of us are going to be unhappy, the other half are going to be miserable. and then the day after election day, we're going to go back to work because that's what we should have done in the first place. Questions about life insurance, questions about term, questions about this poor young man who shouldn't have bought an IUL. The differences between a guarantee in an IUL. Now, I wanted to point out the guarantee in the IUL was the guaranteed worst case insurance charges that the insurance company charges us. So now, who does that guarantee protect?
Insurance.
There you go. On the other side of the equation, I give you a copy of one of my policies, has a guaranteed cash surrender value that has no other deductions taken from it, where the values are expressed in dollars, not percentages. That guarantee, the way I look at it, is there purely to protect me. I don't have to worry about hidden charges, hidden fees, expenses that they, oh, by the way, forgot to mention, increasing mortality charges that, frankly, if anybody had ever read this page, would anybody ever buy a policy? Anybody here would ever buy a policy? I mean, Kurt would say, well, it depends. If I'm earning 19% year in and year out in the stock market, and I'm putting $1 million in the policy, I might be able to overcome the charges. But really, why did somebody buy this policy? You already got your CE certificate, so it's okay to answer. Why did somebody buy this policy? Because they never saw this page. That's a lack of full disclosure. And the agent probably didn't point out this page because the agent didn't know it was there, A. Or B, the agent didn't want you to see it. So they kind of just glossed over it, got to the last page where you say, sign here. I don't know if we're going to make any friends telling people that their insurance policies are going to go away. But in all likelihood, these policies will not last. They will implode before it's time for you to check out or graduate. I think that's all I have. And I'm open to questions. Yes, sir.
You were, I guess most people buy policies for themselves, but grandparents buy policies for grandkids, is that?
Oh, so glad you asked that.
Or how's, is that beneficial, because it seems like a long policy.
Gee, don't I have I think I have a copy. Oh, gee, you just set me up.
So,
Now, I just bought 2 policies on my 2 brand new grandchildren. You're looking at the illustration. I was only able to buy $1 million on each child. Now, if you look at the column that's highlighted in yellow, I think this is worth talking about. Because I think that if a person has a mind to send their child to college in 15 or 20 years, they might want to be prepared for it. I already memorized the numbers, I'm good. Yeah. I mean, what is you know, I have a niece who was thinking about going to Loyola or Villanova next year. The freight's going to be about $60,000, $65,000 a year, so that's $250,000 for 4 years. So 20 years from now, if we have a couple $100,000 in a policy, maybe we have enough for 1 year. I don't know. I know one thing. If we don't have a $250,000 stashed away somewhere, we have less of a head start. So you have to start somewhere. That's A. Now, a lot of folks who come into this room tell me that they're 100% focused on long term. So now go to the child's age 70. There are 2 numbers that I want you to look at. At age 70, if you look over the left-hand side, you'll see that the premium on this policy is $3,000. What is the column that's highlighted yellow? At age 70, what is the cash value increase, if anybody can read that number? I can't hear you.
124,050.
So you wrote a check for $3,000 and the company credited your policy for $100,000 plus. I'm not sure what the rate of return on that is, but it sounds good to me. Now that's only the cash value increase. Look 1 space to the right, and what is the total cash value in that policy?
2.6.
2. Do you think maybe if that child has $2.7 million in one policy, maybe that policy is owned by the family trust, because I'm the kind of person who will control my kids' fortunes from the grave. This is for the record. We're not going to be dumping millions of dollars on my child when she's 30 or 45. It's not going to happen. We're going to keep on passing the fortune and the value and the legacy down, so that maybe the interest on the legacy can do the good that we want it to do. But do you think there's a good chance that if this child, who was just born 2 months ago, when she's 70 years old, do you think she might have other assets? This might be just one of them. If she gets good training, I mean, don't start teaching your kids about money when they're 15 years old or 20 years old. Teach them, well, maybe not when they're 2 days. Wait until they're a year. Because if you wait until they're 15 or 20, they're going to have hardwired the wrong ideas. So when she's 70 years old, she's got $2.5 million. She's probably had some good training between now and then. And like Anthony is fond of reminding me, is it okay if that's tax-free? Will that still be okay with you? Now, how many of you have asked the question in your mind, I wonder what's the rate of return on that policy? Nobody? Your accountants, you haven't asked that question? You asked that question? Do you care?
I do. I'll go figure it out later if you don't tell me.
Okay. I know you will. We actually have a report that has the year-by-year breakdown of what the rate of return is. But remember, if you're not looking at the right type of product, rates of return will be a total lie. First of all. Now, second of all, I gave you the report that only discusses really the cash flow. Now, earlier, I showed you the gentleman, 51 years old, puts $1 million into a policy, got a 3% rate of return. His cash value in 44 years was 0 under worst case scenario. Under midline or moderate scenario, his rate of return, his dollar return was about $1.7 million. And I looked up and I ran a whole life policy on that individual, taking him out to 95, and as opposed to having a maybe in that cash value number, his guaranteed cash value, no matter what happens, was 1.7 million. Okay, policy A, guarantee of 0, possibility of $1.7 million. Policy B, minimum guarantee $1.7 million, possibility of double that. And I'm not in this business long enough to know all the answers, but you guys are going to have to tell me what I'm missing if IUL is a good idea. But if it's a bad idea, I'm hereby deputizing you to ask your friends, your parents, your siblings, your kids, your clients, what in the heck are you buying that stuff for? What was your last question you were going to ask me? When we had prepared and rehearsed this one, in case all the technology fell apart. Everybody get a bite to eat, everybody get a drink, everybody got their CE certificate. You get that at the end.
We gotta get it at the end in case any CPAs
Okay.
try to
Okay,
break
good,
out.
good. So, thank you for being here. I hate to ask this question because I hate to imagine that I get a negative answer. Did anybody get anything out of this? Good. Thanks for being courteous. Appreciate that. Some of this information is kind of leaning toward the technical, but unfortunately, clients are buying stuff without asking some of the right questions, and they don't know the questions to ask. So we provide this information to everybody who will ask it, and we really suggest that people just come in and bring their policies. You know what? Bring your contracts in, not your statements, your entire contract. We'll go through it with you page by page. We'll show you what it says, and you can go back to your agent. It's okay with us. All we're saying is, this is what the policy says. Go back to your agent and say, hey, why'd you sell me this? And if they have a good answer, then buy some more, right? Then just make sure that it stays in effect until you need it to stay in effect. All right? I hope I helped you. I appreciate you being here.